Hi and welcome. My name is Charlotte. I'm a teacher with almost a decade's worth of teaching experience. I've taught in South Africa and South Korea. I'm currently doing my master's degree through the University of Birmingham. In this presentation, we'll be looking at the role of English as an international language. Let's jump right in.
In the period between the reign of the first English-speaking king, King Henry IV in the 15th century, and the current reign of Queen Elizabeth II in the 21st century, the number of English speakers in the world has increased dramatically. It is estimated that towards the end of the 16th century, there were between 5 to 7 million English speakers in the world, most of them living in the British Isles. Current estimates indicate that there may be as many as 2 billion English speakers in the world at the moment, with the majority now living outside the British Isles. The number of English speakers continues to increase globally for a number of reasons. In the middle of the 20th century, the idea that a lingua franca was needed for the whole world arose along with the rise of many international bodies, such as the World Bank, UNICEF, and UNESCO. Up to 190 countries were suddenly represented in a single meeting place, and the need to adopt a lingua franca to facilitate communication emerged strongly. There are many other reasons too. In China, for example, the number of EFL speakers increased as more people studied English in preparation for hosting the 2008 Beijing Olympics. And potentially the same would have happened in Japan recently, as they are hosts of the 2021 Olympic Games. So, which role does English play in the world today? There exists a range of opinions about the role of English as an international language. Some say that English is neutral, others argue that English is imperialistic, and others are of the view that English is democratic. Before we discuss these 3 points any further, it is important to define a few key terms.
Language is what the members of a particular society speak.
Language is social by nature, hence inextricably connected with the society who creates and uses it. Society can be defined as
Any group of people who are drawn together for a certain purpose or purposes.
a society consists out of people who share a common culture, whereas a culture consists out of the values, beliefs, behaviors, and ideas of a society. Culture and society are so interconnected that the one cannot exist without the other.
Culture, therefore, is the know how that a person must possess to get through the task of daily living.
Language is the medium for expressing and embodying this know how. Therefore, a particular language reflects the culture of a particular society. English as a native language is the language of those who acquired English as their mother tongue during early childhood, in a country where English is historically the first language. Cochrane defines these countries as the traditional basis of English, where English functions as a first language. These inner circle countries include the UK, USA, Australia, Canada, and South Africa. The varieties used here are said to be norm providing, since these countries provide what is regarded as standard English. Cochrane's 3 concentric circles model separates English-speaking societies further into outer and expanding countries. The outer circle are post-colonial countries, where English has become part of the chief institutions and where English plays an important role as a lingua franca between different language and ethnic groups. The English language norms are developed in the inner circle and spread outwards. Thus, the outer circle countries are norm developing. The outer circle then adopts these norms and in some instances develop their own localized norms with its own linguistic and cultural identity. These varieties are usually defined as World Englishes or New Englishes. By developing their own norms, the outer circle takes ownership. Everyone who has studied English now has a share in it and may use it in whichever manner they want. For example, watch night in Nigerian English means to stay up through the night when celebrating a festival. Expanding circle countries refer to countries which have no history of colonization by inner circle countries, and where English is learned as a foreign language. Expanding circle countries are norm dependent as they do not develop their own varieties of English. Speakers usually use their mother tongue rather than English for interethnic communication. They only use English to communicate with people who have a different mother tongue than their own. Hence, they use English as a lingua franca. Here, English might seem to be value neutral and cultural free, as it's merely used as a means of communication. But it should be remembered that language, society, and culture are so intertwined that English would, in some way or another, carry the values of Western civilization. Let's get back to the range of opinions that exist about English as an international language. English is neutral. English is spoken in 6 continents, and thus the least geographically restricted language in the world. Speakers of English as a lingua franca are now arguably outnumbering first language speakers. However, Wardo's claim that English belongs to everyone or to no one is far too polemical. Undeniably, when the world's largest English-speaking nation consists of only an estimated 20% of the English speakers on the planet, it is clear that English has indeed become a global language and does seem to belong to everyone.
The English language ceased to be the sole possession of the English some time ago, and that the people who were once colonized by the language are now rapidly remaking it, domesticating it, becoming more and more relaxed about the way they use it.
English currently has an unprecedented number of owners, for which it serves a multitude of different purposes. Thus, Wardo's claim that English belongs to no one is highly debatable, as each speech community seems to have become the owner of their own English. Whereas Wardo sees English as being value and culture free, while serving everyone equally well, Philipson suggests that English is a vehicle of cultural domination and argues that the spread of English holds devastating consequences for other cultures and languages.
Language has always been the consort of empire and forever shall remain its mate.
Language dominance has its origins in conquest and military invasion. Yet the spread of English in the 21st century depends less on military force and more on commercial pressures, economic influence, political conformity, and for intellectual and social reasons. Philipson argues that the spread of English conjointly spreads inner circle culture, while putting periphery countries at a disadvantage. There is also evidence that national languages, especially those of smaller nations like Sweden, are under threat, and that a new global market has been created for English language teaching, which has increased the profits of transnational enterprises, while strengthening the echelons between nations such as the USA and the periphery. In Nigeria, a post-colonial country with English currently as its official language, English performs a useful function in its multilingual society, and Baisong argues that English is no longer perceived as the imperial tongue that must be mastered at all costs, and that reasons for learning English are now more pragmatic in nature, and run counter to Philipson's argument. Baisong suggests that English is used side by side with native languages to express Nigerian culture, and that Philipson fails to appreciate the complexities of the situation in a country such as Nigeria. Thus, while Philipson's claims about the impact that English language teaching has on peripheral countries might be true, some of his claims appear to be overstated, as shown by Baisong. English is democratic. David Crystal makes reference to the structural aspects of English and points out that English does not code social class differences. Asian languages, such as Korean, use honorifics according to distinctions based on group membership and hierarchy to show respect. For example, it would be considered rude to use a peer-based format to address one's seniors in Korea. The English language does seem to place a smaller emphasis on formalities, yet it can be argued that English too has certain socially accepted titles of address, which, if not used correctly, will be considered impolite. For example, the use of Mr. or Mrs. in certain professional or business settings. All cultures have a politeness system with socially acceptable titles of address, but some languages, such as Korean, place more emphasis on the use of honorifics and are thus viewed as less democratic. When expressing politeness, English second language speakers can choose between using their own politeness speech acts or that of their second language. As shown by Jenkins, there are examples from India where honorifics are borrowed from Indian languages and then added to British English lexical items to mark a polite style. Thus, it might be argued that a less democratic variety of English is being spoken in India. When discussing the role of English as an international language, it is important to look at the role that English plays in social development. Scientific information is cumulative. It is constantly stored and retrieved. This has led to a meaningful relationship between language and scientific information. More than 3/4 of scientific papers in the world are published in English, and in some fields it is more than 90%. A great deal of scientific research and technological advances were conducted in the English-speaking world, which coincided with the historical point at which computer use was established. English found itself in the right place at the right time, as David Crystal pointed out. Modernization is a continuous and open-ended process, and language needs to adapt and develop along with it in order to keep pace with the ever-changing world. Every new invention requires the invention of new vocabulary words. For example, the development of technology along with vocabulary like computer. Periphery countries are often required to use English to access these new technologies, and after acquiring the technology have to find ways of expressing it. Local languages might thus be seen as hindering to modernization. Yet, not everyone applauds the development of English as a symbol of modernization. Philipson argues that there was a conscious attempt by Great Britain and the United States to expand the use of English to create a dependency on the two countries. Philipson states that English has served the political and economic interests of Great Britain and the US at the expense of the periphery. He claims that English has failed the periphery, and it has not allowed them to share in the technological advances made by the inner circle. In spite of this, the drive to make progress in science and technology continues to foster an environment in which English plays a crucial role within education. The desire for English education in East Asia is so great that it is being referred to as English fever. In Korea, English has an important place in the curriculum, which leads parents to spend heavily. English is unquestionably the most important foreign language in South Korea, whether in education, employment, or popular culture. Job assurance was identified as one of the most important reasons for studying English in Korea, and the desire to become the perfect English speaker, as propagated by the media, is seen as paramount by ambitious Korean women. Statistics show that the number of people around the world pursuing to learn English continues to increase. People view English as a tool that opens the doors to opportunity, which might otherwise be closed.
English is the fabled Aladdin's lamp, which permits one to open, as it were, the linguistic gates to international business, technology, science, and travel.
However, English language education has led to serious educational and social inequality in South Korea, and the so-called English divide now exists between the rich and the poor. Furthermore, while English seems to open the doors of opportunity, it seems to close the doors on local languages. In Pakistan, people are increasingly giving up the use of their local language in favor of English. In Nigeria, a diverse country of more than 500 languages, the decision was made to use its former colonial language, English, as its official language, as to facilitate linguistic and cultural unity. The danger of English displacing local languages has been widely expressed. Baisong counters this by saying that English performs a useful function in multicultural and multilingual Nigeria, and that it has not displaced, neither replaced, any of the local languages. In South Africa, English is not solely to blame for language death, as one of the main causes are the displacement of people from traditional lands. At the start of the 21st century, newly elected Korean President Lee Myung-bak referred to the world as a battlefield, with English being a key weapon for survival. He feels that English proficiency provides countries with a competitive edge in the globalized world. The English language should be seen as enriching and as something that can be used when, and if needed, alongside native languages. Bilingualism can play a major role in preventing language death. Thus, it is important to make people aware of the importance of their indigenous languages. English plays a role in the development of countries in the outer and expanding circle by virtue of modernization and enhanced employment opportunities. Yet, it is important to remember that language reflects the culture of a particular society. For this reason, local languages will be more befitting in the role of maintenance, as it will reflect the societies and cultures within the periphery more accurately.
We should not maintain English above other Indian languages, but we should rather see that other languages flourish so that the culture and civilization of which language is a manifestation can survive. English is the key external link language, but should not be given a dominant position internally. In our relations with the rest of the world, English will help us achieve globalization, modernization, and an economy that will ensure a qualitatively better life for all of us.
Matthew sees English as something that gives India an edge over monolingual countries in that Indians can acquire multiple languages with ease and then use them for a variety of purposes. He states that India should capitalize on this asset that children have of being fluent in 2 or 3 languages. But he, as well as others, maintains that India's culture will only be preserved and flourish if Indian languages flourish too. Local languages already embody local culture and the linguistic needs of its society. Thus, local languages are best suited and especially important for the maintenance of intangible cultural heritage. The initial spread of English might have been an imperialistic process, but in modern society, with globalization, the continued development of technology, and the expansion of business, there has been an increased need to communicate interculturally and adopt a lingua franca. English has been adopted and adapted to facilitate this role. Local languages already fulfill the linguistic needs of its society and are satisfactory to convey cultural know-how. Yet, alongside local languages, English is a useful additional resource to society that contributes to greater cultural understanding and achievement.